Hi, my name is Bibek Adhikari. I am your English instructor. In today's class, we are going to solve the grammar portion of Unit 2, that is obligation structures. So let's begin. So we are going to learn about obligations and structures that are related to obligations in this class. Let us now read a sample paragraph and underline some obligation structures like must, have to, and should. The paragraph goes something like this. A doctor says to his patient, as your temperature isn't rising, you must have an injection every day. You mustn't drink any alcohol until you've finished your tablets, and you must stay indoors for at least 3 days. After that, you can go out for short walks, but you mustn't do anything too energetic. If there is any pain in your back, you must lie flat on your back. To save yourself from heavy dehydration, you must drink 5 liters of water a day. Things will improve very soon, and in this case, you needn't stay in the hospital anymore. You have to be polite with other patients in this ward, and you should always follow my advice. Now let us find out all the obligation structures. We have already done that. We have must, the negative form mustn't. After that we have to and should. So what are the obligation structures? They are must, have to, and finally should. These three are called the structures of obligation. Must, have to, and should. They denote, what do they denote? They denote obligation. What does obligation mean? Obligation means that you need to do something without complaining, right? So in the passages given above, the words must, have to, and should express obligations. We use these words to say when things are necessary, that certain things are done. The negative of must is mustn't, which means you can't do somebody or something as a rule, as it is harmful. The negative of have to is don't have to, which means it is not necessary to do something. When something is the right thing to do, we use should, or sometimes we use ought to, right? When it is a wrong thing to do, we use shouldn't or oughtn't, and these are called modal verbs. So the negative of should is shouldn't, and the negative of ought to is oughtn't to. Alright? So what are these called? These are called modal verbs. These are called modal verbs. Now let's look at some examples. Modal verbs. Now suppose you are a doctor and the other is a patient now. The doctor advises the patient what he or she must do and mustn't do. Begin your sentences from some of the modal verbs that are given below. Now I want you to write some sentences supposing that you are a doctor. We are assuming that you are a doctor and you are giving some advices, to your patient friend. Simply to your patient, because we are working in pairs. Now you need to make some suggestions by using some of the modal verbs like must, have to, should, ought to, and their negative forms. So let's begin. You must drink 5 liters of water every day. You have to do a brisk exercise. You mustn't drink any alcohol. You should try to eat green vegetables. You ought to drink hot water, glasses of lukewarm water, like that. You shouldn't eat anything that's oily and spicy. You don't have to do heavy exercises, right? Now let us just review this structure. We have you must drink, you have to do, you mustn't drink, you should try, and you ought to drink. So must drink means something that you need to do, that you have to do. Have to is an obligation, and mustn't is also the negative form of must, which is an obligation structure. Finally, we have ought to, which is another obligation structure, and should denote something that you should do, right? So these are the suggestions. We have some more suggestions like you should not eat and you don't have to do. So these are more suggestions done by using some of the modal verbs. Alright, now let's do another question that's given in the book. Okay, let us now start by solving these questions. We have a question called rewrite the following sentences, selecting appropriate modal verbs. So the question is to select the appropriate modal verbs from the brackets. We have 6 different questions. The first one is students blank space wear school uniform. So the options are must and mustn't. Should students wear school uniform? So the question could be, must students wear school uniform? So the answer to that question is students must wear school uniform. Another question is, children blank space play in the mud. Shouldn't. Children shouldn't play in the mud because it's a dirty habit and you should not do it. Sunita and her brother blank space get up early on Saturdays because they do not have to go to school on Saturdays. So they don't have to get up early on Saturdays because they don't have to go to school. Now go to number D. When we cut down one tree, we should. Correct? We should plant two in its place. If you are suffering from a cold, you mustn't have cold drinks. You have to be, okay, B is missing. You have to be polite with other people. Very easy. So here are some of the rules and regulations that are for the zoo visitors. If you ever go to a zoo, you will find, a lot of rules and regulations there. So there would be a list of rules and regulations. Different things would be sorted out, listed out there. So some of the rules and regulations for visitors in a zoo are given below. Visitors mustn't give food to the animals. Visitors are not allowed to litter in the garden. Visitors mustn't smoke within the zoo premises. Poking at the animals is strictly prohibited. Now, can you find out the basic structures that are used? The first one is mustn't do. The second one is not allowed to. The third one is mustn't smoke. Mustn't plus verb 1. And finally, the last one is strictly prohibited. So these are some of the ways in which you can make, and write rules and regulations. So all you need to do is you need a little knowledge of modal verbs and you need to give some advices. So all you need, the trick for writing rules and regulations is you need to have the knowledge of modal verbs and you need to know how to give advices. We are very good at giving advices. We give advices for free to people we don't even know, right? So we Nepalis are very good at giving advices. So combine modal verbs with advices and try to write as many rules and regulations as possible. I'm going to give you one homework on this topic. So this is your homework. Write a set of rules and regulations to be followed in a library hall. Imagine you are in a library hall, you are trying to read some book and suddenly a couple of people, they start talking, they start whispering in the beginning and they then loudly, they're yelling at each other. So how would that feel? For that, I want you to write a set of rules and regulations to be followed in a library hall. So you can write at least 4 rules or you can write more than that. All you need to do is you need to use modal verbs and you need to combine them with advices. So you need to use modal verbs and advices. So if you follow this structure, you can write as many rules as possible. With this, we have come to end of today's class. If you have any questions or suggestions regarding this video series, feel free to write us at learning@deerwalk.edu.np. Thank you.